So I wanted to give an update story about my transition from being a leftist Democrat to where I am right now. And I know I had my own walkaway video story that I made a few years ago that has almost 1 million views that I took down. And I hate that video because I literally made a video late at night when after I was painting, helping someone paint. There's literally like paint on my shirt. The music doesn't match the vibe of the video. The camera quality sucks. I just look like a complete mess, and I felt like I can revamp this, do it better, and just make a better updated version of my walkaway story. Basically just telling how I became independent, conservative, I guess non-leftist person. But I'm actually gonna leave that video up, my old one. I'm gonna put it back up because just in case people want to see the old version, so you're welcome. I find a lot of Black Americans to be a bit of an oxymoron when it comes to politics or mindsets and culture. I believe Black Americans typically are more conservative than other groups of people. However, we do also accept a lot of liberal leftist ideology, especially the ones that the leftists are spewing out currently. I come from a Black American Caribbean family. Majority of my family is Jamaican, so I come from a Jamaican culture. And island culture is very conservative at heart. And even though my family wasn't necessarily Christian, we were religious. And oftentimes, many Black people go to church, they believe in the Bible, or they believe in some version of God. They do appreciate family, even though a lot of our families are broken. But there is a healthy amount of conservative ideals in the Black community. However, since the 60s, politically, and even liberally, some of the things we believe are more democratic, liberal in nature. For example, even though Black people tend to be very conservative when it comes to family, we are very liberal when it comes to our behaviors with family. A lot of babies out of wedlock, sexual promiscuity, and many other things. Because a lot of Blacks don't necessarily believe a lot of the rhetoric that a lot of leftists spew out. But anyway, that's pretty much the foundation of how I grew up. Majority of my family is pro-Black, and they believe a lot of the pro-Black narratives that the white man is evil. I remember my dad, when I used to see him, he was a Rastafarian, and a lot of Rastafarians or very pro-Black people believe that the white man created the Bible to enslave Black people. That's probably an argument you've heard plenty of times from certain Blacks. And a good amount of my family is actually from the Nation of Islam, or they're 5%ers, and they're very... I don't know if I have any Hebrew Israelites in my family, but basically the point is a lot of my family is very pro-Black, anti-white, that the white man is evil, and and a lot of the things we learn about our history is how we were enslaved and brought here from Africa to the U.S. or to the West, and the segregation, all that stuff. However, with me, I personally never experienced racism when I was younger. And of course, you learned about it in school when they taught you about the civil rights movement and slavery. That's when I guess many kids were officially introduced to the concept of racism in America's history. But again, I didn't have any racial experiences when I was younger. And I got along with everybody. I got along with white people, Latin people, Asian people, anybody. Like I wasn't kind of like confined to my own group. Like if we vibed, I kick it with you. Like it didn't matter about skin tone to me. And I think that's because I come from a very conservative island culture where we're taught to be respectful, carry yourself with dignity, know how to talk to adults, respect adults, all that kind of stuff. So even though my family was broken and I come from a single mother household, I was still brought up to have manners and respect people. So I got along with everybody. However, because of a lot of the seeds that were planted by my family through, hanging out with your aunts and uncles and my father, it wasn't until I was in 8th grade, where I went to a predominantly white school, that a lot of those seeds that were planted in me from when I was younger started coming out. I started believing that all white people were racist, and I started believing that, every white person hated me because I was Black, or they made fun of me. And that was because I wasn't necessarily exposed to an environment with majority white people. And especially in that middle school I went to in my 8th grade year, it was in a good part of town. A lot of high middle class or wealthy people sent those kids to that school. And it happened for a little bit. It wasn't too long, but I can see a lot of that planting from my family and from the Black folks around me. It started manifesting when I went to that school when I was in 8th grade. But honestly, again, I've never had negative experiences really much with people outside of my racial group. The majority of my bad experiences or negative things that were done to me or happened to me were actually from Black people. And I'm pretty sure that's common in most majority groups of people, that you have people within your culture or your race that does things against you. But for me, almost 99.9% of all the negative experiences I had were from black people. And I think partially also that was because I was a good kid. I wasn't a thug or trying to be a cool guy. Like, I was just myself, I was just me, I was there, nice, smart, nerdy, somewhat nerdy kid. So even with that, the cultural identity with black people, I didn't really fit into that stereotype of you're either like the thug or the cool guy or the sports guy. I was good at sports, but because I lacked confidence in myself, I always did poorly, if that makes any sense. But it's not until 2014-15 when the Black Lives Matter movement really kicked off with the shooting of Trayvon Martin, and in many cases after that, where online a lot of people started, saying on, the systematic racism, white people are evil, white people are the devil, black men keep getting shot by cops. And for me, even though I was brought up in a family that agreed with that rhetoric, I always was a free thinker and I thought for myself. And for me, if you just observe and just look, the truth is right there in front of you. And for me, I grew up in poor areas and I went to failing schools, and I see how a lot of these lost kids act. A lot of these kids are wilding out, trying to be thugs or hoodlums or whatever. And I'm like, if you send out a certain energy and a certain vibe of yourself, you get that back returned to you, if that makes any sense. In a lot of the cases where black men were shot by cops, I'm like, the cops are justified in doing that. And again, because a lot of my negative experiences also came from, I guess, ghetto black America, I do realize that a lot of these people are, not good people, or they're very misguided people. So it's like the cops, we kill each other more than, that cops do. And this was just basic knowledge. I didn't do any research. I wasn't into politics. It's just basically what I've observed in my life. Like, a lot of people getting arrested because they're selling drugs or they're, involved in gang violence or whatever. Like, I'll be the first one to say that. And after a while of me saying stuff like that, I got a lot of heat by a lot of people. And eventually, over time, from just hearing it from my family, social media, and celebrities, everybody saying this stuff, I started believing in the systematic racism, and I started hating white people. And it wasn't for a very long time. However, it was a very miserable time. I thought that all white people were bad. I thought all white people were out to get me. Even though I personally didn't have much white friends. Of course, I've been in environments with white people, I've talked to white people, but I've never had like a very intimate connection with anyone who was white. So you can see a lot of times when you don't know much about a group of people or you're unfamiliar with, it's easy to believe certain things or have a negative view on them because of what you've heard or what people say around you. And yeah, it was bad. I had a lot of bitterness in my heart and I was miserable. Like, I looked at every white person, I'm like, man, they have it good, man. The system works for them. Man, they hate us, they're oppressing us. And to the point, I was saved at this point, and it was so horrible that I went to seek my pastor for guidance because it was killing me on the inside. So I went to my pastor. He basically, told me that when you live in America, there's always gonna be a white person that's gonna help you with stuff. But not only that, you shouldn't have hate towards your heart against somebody, because then, if you are not forgiving people, or if you hate people, like, how can you expect God to forgive you your sins or the things you've done? And I don't want to be a hypocrite. But not only that, it was just that, as a Christian, like, God doesn't call us to hate people. We're supposed to love people, understand, why things happen, but at the same time, don't keep that bitterness in your heart, because what you believe affects your actions. And because I believed that all white people were evil, it made me look at them a certain way, and I started hating them. And then it kind of changed how I interacted with whites as well. Even though in my prior experience, I had no problems with white people at all. So my pastor helped talk some sense into me. I believe God used him at that time, and I kind of calmed down for a bit, and I wasn't so fixated on my hatred anymore. And thank God that, it was just a short time. I was miserable. There's a certain YouTuber I used to watch that he was a conservative, and I saw one video from him, and I was listening to his arguments, and I'm like, wow, what he's saying makes sense. And because I'm a free thinker, and I like to hear different ideas about stuff, and I like to challenge my view of thinking, I started listening to more of his videos, and eventually I started, that was kind of like the seeds that were planted, that I was able to hear the other side of the argument than the ones I've been hearing all my life. And through that channel, that led me to Ben Shapiro. And there was a time where I used to watch a lot of the Ben Shapiro destroys this person with facts and logic and all that, and I was binge watching Shapiro. And Shapiro's arguments about a lot of things about, transgenderism, about the male identity, about social issues, all that kind of stuff. The more I started listening to Ben, the more it's like, man, what he's saying makes sense, because I'm a very logical thinker. And even though some of the stuff was very hard to swallow, eventually it just made sense to me the more I started hearing what Ben was saying. Then that led me to other conservative voices like Larry Elder, Candace Owens, Jordan Peterson, the Officer Tatum. Like, that just opened up a whole new channel where I was able to hear other arguments and learn about politics, real history, the conservative worldview. And from that point on, I got into politics and I became a hardcore conservative Republican. And then eventually I made this channel in 2018 because with all this newfound knowledge, I just wanted to tell people what I thought. And it was a rough time also in the beginning phases because everyone around me, if they weren't a Democrat or a leftist, they either believed a lot of leftist talking points. So a lot of times, like, it was just me against the world, felt like, because I felt like I was the only rational thinking person, or the person who knew the truth from my friends and family. My family didn't like what I was saying, my friends didn't like what I was saying, even a lot of my church folks didn't like what I was saying, and I felt very alone because I'm like, dang, no one knows the truth, that, you know, Democrats have been oppressing people for years. And again, my thoughts on Democrats and Republicans before I got into politics was that I felt like Democrats cared about everybody, like, you know, black, whites, immigrants, everybody. However, I didn't believe the things that they believed were biblical. I believed, like, you know, it was wrong. Like, a lot, like, they cared about people emotionally, but a lot of the things they were saying, like, didn't align with my worldviews. However, I felt conservatives were more biblical leaning. They believed more in what the Bible taught. However, I believe that rhetoric that all Republicans were these older white men who just hated everyone else besides white people, and they were rich and stingy with their money. So I believe that Republicans agreed with my worldview. However, I felt like emotionally the Democrats seemed to care about people more than the other side did. And I think that's a huge reason why many people vote Democrat, is because I think they won the argument based off emotions, that people think they care. And again, a lot of people think with their hearts, not with their brains, so it makes sense why a lot of people would. But anyway, for years I was a hardcore conservative. However, as I grew up, I started to be more nuanced with my arguments. I'm still conservative leaning as far as my worldviews now, but I don't consider myself a Republican or, you know, or a Democrat, definitely not, but I'm more of an independent. However, I'm very conservative leanings, meaning that, like, I believe a lot of what the conservatives say or the Republicans say. However, my view in the parties now is that I believe Democrats are complete nut jobs, and they're crazy, and they're either stupid or they're evil, because a lot of things they do is just messed up to me. However, I feel like Republicans are a bunch of cowards. They say they want change and they say they want to do this, but then it's like you finally get power and you do nothing. I feel like there's a lot of what do you call it, status Republicans who just like to be Republican, but they don't really do anything to enact change. And then when people are trying to do that, it's like they have a problem with that. But it's like all you guys do is complain about what the leftists are doing, but you guys are doing nothing to fight back or push back against that. So to me, I feel like the Democrats are crazy and the Republicans are cowards. So the two C's, crazy, cowards. So at the moment, I'm very well informed about politics. I've been into politics for the last 4 or 5 years and right now. However, recently I took a break because it was very draining, because you're absorbing a lot of negative news all the time, and a lot of times it's easy to get carried away in the negativity. So sometimes I just had to take a breather, but now I have a lot to say and about a lot of things, not just politics, but culture, mindsets, philosophy. You know, I want to expand on a whole bunch of that stuff, but that's where I am now. I'm an independent conservative, but mainly, first things first, I'm a Christian. You know, my worldview is by the Bible. That's what I believe. And then after that is anything that I see that aligns with my worldview, pretty much. And yes, that is a story of how I became an independent conservative. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. But yeah, more videos coming soon, so look forward to that.